Okay, let's talk about St. Paul's Cathedral in this two-part video. It's a fantastic building, wouldn't you say? I mean, you can't miss it, can you? It's perched up on Ludgate Hill like it owns the place, and it's seen a fair bit of history in its time, as are St. Paul's. We're talking centuries of stories, from fires and plagues to coronations and some right royal shenanigans. It's like London's own Grand Theatre, this place, and we've got front row seats to a right royal show spanning over 1400 years. We'll be digging deep into the archives, dusting off the old scrolls and seeing what secrets we can uncover. And trust me, there are some corkers in there. So, put the kettle on, grab a bicky and settle in as we embark on a right royal romp through the history of St. Paul's Cathedral from its early days to the Reformation. Hold on to your hats, folks, because it's going to be a bumpy ride. Now, our story begins long before the current St. Paul's was even a twinkle in its architect's eye. We're talking Roman times, back when London was still a youngster called Londinium. Imagine gladiators, chariots, and more togas than you could shake a stick at. In those days, Christianity was just finding its feet, spreading through the Roman Empire like wildfire. And guess what? Londinium got its very own church, a proper basilica no less. We don't know a whole lot about it, mind you, but it was there, right where St. Paul's stands today. But then, like a right rotter, the Roman Empire went and crumbled, leaving poor old Londinium to fend for itself. The old Roman church probably fell into disrepair and things went a bit quiet on the religious front for a while. But don't worry, things were about to get a whole lot more interesting. Enter stage left. St. Augustine, a proper religious superstar sent all the way from Rome to convert those pagan Anglo-Saxons. He set up shop in Canterbury, and from there the Christian faith began to spread across the land, and that's where our St. Paul's story really kicks off. Back in 604 AD, London was a far cry from the bustling metropolis it is today. Wooden buildings, muddy streets, and dodgy characters. But that didn't deter Mellitus. Sent by Pope Gregory, Mellitus came to spread the good word. He was appointed as London's first bishop. The Anglo-Saxons were a tough crowd. Mellitus built the first St. Paul's Cathedral. A modest wooden structure, but a cathedral nonetheless. It was about laying the foundations for something bigger. With its consecration, London began its journey to becoming a religious powerhouse. Now you'd think that with a shiny new cathedral and a royal seal of approval, Mellitus would have it made, wouldn't you? Well, think again. Life as a bishop in 7th century London was no walk in the park. They weren't exactly lining up to convert. One minute you're flavour of the month, next thing you know you're public enemy number one. Sadly for Mellitus, King Ethelbert's death left his pagan son Eadbald in charge, and Eadbald wasn't too keen on Christianity. So Mellitus legged it to France, seeking refuge. Talk about a change of scenery. Eventually he found his way back to Canterbury. Now, sadly, we don't know a great deal about that first St. Paul's Cathedral. No blueprints, no fancy paintings, just a few tantalizing clues whispered through the corridors of time. It's a bit like trying to piece together a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing in it. But we do know this. It stood as a testament to Mellitus's unwavering commitment to bringing Christianity to London. And while he may not have lived to see his vision fully realized, his legacy lived on. You see, Mellitus wasn't just a bishop, he was a bit of a miracle worker too. Legend has it that he once put out a fire with nothing but a prayer. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds like a proper miracle to me. No wonder he was made a saint. To this very day, they celebrate St. Mellitus's feast day at St. Paul's, a right royal knees up in honor of the man who started it all. So there you have it, the first chapter in the epic tale of St. Paul's Cathedral. Well, things were going swimmingly, weren't they? Mellitus had set up shop in London, built himself a cathedral, and started spreading the good word. But then King Ethelbert kicked the bucket. His son, Eadbald, took over. Eadbald wasn't keen on Christianity. So Mellitus packed his bags and scarpered. He decided discretion was the better part of valor and hot-footed it out of London. He ended up in France, leaving the fledgling Christian community leaderless. Imagine London in the 7th century, a melting pot of beliefs with Christianity and paganism jostling for dominance. It's enough to make your head spin, isn't it? On one side, you had the old ways, the pagan rituals passed down through generations. Offerings to the gods, feasting, a good old knees up under the oak tree. On the other, you had this newfangled Christianity with its talk of one God, forgiveness, and turning the other cheek. It was a time of great upheaval, a bit like trying to herd cats, really. The religious landscape was about as stable as a three-legged stool. One minute it looked like Christianity was gaining ground. The next, paganism was making a comeback. And caught in the middle were the ordinary folk of London, trying to make sense of it all. Some embraced Christianity wholeheartedly, others clung to the old ways, and some, well, they probably just kept their heads down and hoped for the best. It was a time of uncertainty, of shifting allegiances, and of a city struggling to find its spiritual footing. One thing's for sure, though, it would have been a fascinating time to be a fly on the wall. Now, Mellitus, he might have scarpered off to France, but he didn't exactly disappear into obscurity, did he? Oh no, he was a busy bee. Our Mellitus. He eventually found his way back to England, and what's more, he ended up becoming the Archbishop of Canterbury. That's right, top dog in the church. And that's not even the half of it. Remember how I mentioned he was a bit of a miracle worker? Well, legend has it that he once saved a whole church from going up in smoke with nothing but the power of prayer. Talk about a showstopper. No wonder they made him a saint after he popped his clogs in 624 AD. Saint Mellitus, they called him, the patron saint of firefighters, beekeepers, and anyone who's ever had to put out a metaphorical fire. So, even though his time in London was relatively short-lived, Mellitus's impact on the city and on Christianity in England as a whole was nothing short of remarkable. He laid the foundations, both literally and figuratively, for St. Paul's Cathedral, and his legacy lived on long after he shuffled off this mortal coil. And you know what? They still celebrate his feast day at St. Paul's to this very day. So there we were, poor old London, without a bishop and with the future of St. Paul's hanging in the balance, but fear not, because help was at hand. Enter stage left, Cedd, a Northumbrian missionary with a heart of gold and a penchant for converting pagans. Now, Cedd, he was a tough cookie. He'd been trained in the tough school of Northumbrian Christianity, where they didn't mess about. He arrived in London around 653 AD, rolled up his sleeves and got to work. His mission? To re-establish the Christian presence in London and breathe new life into St. Paul's Cathedral. And let me tell you, it was no mean feat. Remember those fickle Londoners? They were still flip-flopping between Christianity and paganism like nobody's business, but Cedd he was a persistent fellow. He preached, he taught, he probably even baked a few cakes to win them over. And slowly but surely, Christianity began to take root once more in the heart of London. St. Paul's, which had stood silent and neglected, was once again filled with the sounds of prayer and worship. Cedd's arrival marked a turning point in the history of St. Paul's. He rekindled the flame of faith that Mellitus had first ignited, ensuring that Christianity would remain a vital force in London for centuries to come. Right then, fast forward a few centuries to the year 1087. London's a bit more established now, but disaster struck, as it often did in those days. Remember that old Anglo-Saxon cathedral Mellitus built? Well, it went up in smoke, and I don't mean a little chimney fire. I'm talking a right royal inferno that left the place looking like a barbecue gone wrong. But every cloud, eh? From those ashes rose a phoenix, or rather the beginnings of what we call Old St. Paul's. This wasn't just some quick fix-up job, mind you. This was going to be a proper masterpiece. A cathedral to rival all cathedrals. The man with the plan was Bishop Maurice, a right ambitious sort who envisioned a cathedral so grand, so awe-inspiring, it would make your average peasant's jaw drop. And he wasn't afraid to ask for a bit of help from his royal chums to make it happen. And so began the construction of Old St. Paul's, a project that would span over 200 years, several bishops, and more than a few hiccups along the way. Now, building a cathedral isn't cheap, even if you do get your mates to lend a hand. Luckily for Bishop Maurice, he was chummy with the big cheese himself, William the Conqueror. And William, being a generous sort when he wasn't off conquering things, donated a whole load of stone to the project. And not just any old rubble, mind you. This was top-notch stuff, shipped all the way from Caen in Normandy. Fancy that. I bet those Norman stonemasons felt right at home, chipping away at their French limestone in the heart of London. But William wasn't the only royal to chip in. King Henry I, who was a bit of a fan of grand gestures, not only donated even more stone, but also declared that any materials heading for St. Paul's could travel toll-free up the River Fleet. Talk about a royal delivery service. With the king on your side and a free pass on the river, you'd think building a cathedral would be a piece of cake. But as we'll see, old St. Paul's was destined for a bit more drama before it was done. You know what they say, you wait ages for a disaster, then two come along at once. Well, in old St. Paul's case, it was more like a whole string of them, one after another. In 1135, a fire broke out on London Bridge, and before you could shout "Fireman Sam," the flames had spread to St. Paul's, causing a right royal mess. Talk about bad luck. They'd only just got the roof on, and there it was, going up in smoke like a bonfire on Guy Fawkes night. But did they give up? Did they heck? These medieval builders were a tough lot. They dusted themselves off, rolled up their sleeves and started patching up the damage. But just as they were getting back on track, Mother Nature decided to throw her weight around. In 1255, a massive storm battered London, and guess who got the brunt of it? Yep, old St. Paul's. The roof took another battering and the whole project was set back again. You've got to admire their persistence, haven't you? It's like one of those DIY projects that never seems to end. Every time they thought they were finished, something else cropped up. Still, they persevered, these dedicated souls, patching, rebuilding and expanding old St. Paul's bit by bit. Finally, after 200 years, old St. Paul's was finished in 1314. It was a glorious hodgepodge of history, a testament to the skill and dedication of those who built it. Old St. Paul's wasn't just a cathedral, it was the heart and soul of London. Fast forward to the late 15th century, a time of great change. Enter John Colet, a scholar and humanist, appointed Dean of St. Paul's in 1505. Colet saw the clergy as too fond of the good life and believed the church had become complacent. He wasn't afraid to say it, shaking things up with his reformist ideas. Colet used his sermons like a verbal sledgehammer, calling out hypocrisy and corruption. He accused the clergy of being more interested in their fancy robes than their parishioners' souls. Even the royal court felt the sharp end of Colet's tongue. Despite accusations of heresy, Colet managed to dodge trouble thanks to powerful friends. Colet wasn't just about tearing things down. He believed in building a better future. He revamped St. Paul's School in 1512, using his own money and a donation from the Mercers Company. Colet insisted on high standards for both teachers and pupils, aiming for a well-rounded education. His vision was to nurture young minds towards a life of faith and good works. Colet died in 1519, but his legacy lived on. His reforms inspired others to challenge the status quo. St. Paul's School became one of the most prestigious schools in the land. John Colet left an indelible mark on both the cathedral and the city. In the 16th century, reading the Bible in English was revolutionary. William Tyndale translated the New Testament into English in 1526. Despite the Church's attempts to ban it, Tyndale's translation spread widely. It allowed people to form their own interpretations and question the Church's authority. Meanwhile, Martin Luther was causing a stir in Germany with his 95 Theses. He challenged the Church's focus on power and money. Luther's ideas spread like wildfire thanks to the printing press. The Reformation led to religious wars and political intrigue, changing Europe forever. Back in England, Henry VIII was desperate for an heir. When the Pope refused his divorce, Henry broke from the Catholic Church. He declared himself head of the Church of England and married Anne Boleyn. This split the Church in England, causing great uncertainty and upheaval. St. Paul's was caught in the turmoil of the Reformation. The old Latin Mass was replaced with English services. Zealous reformers whitewashed stained glass windows. The Dean and Chapter of St. Paul's had to navigate these treacherous waters. John Donne, born in 1572, was a colourful character. He studied at Oxford and Cambridge but couldn't graduate due to his Catholic faith. Donne joined military expeditions against Spain before becoming a secretary. Despite his wild past, Donne never lost his faith. In 1601, Donne eloped with Anne More, causing a scandal. He faced financial difficulties but underwent a religious conversion. Donne was ordained as a priest in 1615. His sermons were legendary, full of passion and wit. In 1621, King James III appointed Donne as Dean of St. Paul's. Donne reformed the cathedral's administration and oversaw repairs. His sermons explored life, death, and faith with depth and honesty. Donne's legacy lives on, a testament to the power of words and faith. So there you have it, a right royal romp through the history of St. Paul's Cathedral, from its humble beginnings to the tumultuous days of the Reformation. We've seen fires, storms, religious squabbles, enough drama to fill a whole season of EastEnders, wouldn't you say? But through it all, St. Paul's has stood strong, a steadfast presence in the ever-changing landscape of London. It's seen kings crowned and queens buried, witnessed plagues and wars, and heard the prayers and aspirations of countless souls. Each stone, each stained glass window whispers tales of faith and folly, of triumph and tragedy. It's a place where history comes alive, where the echoes of the past mingle with the hopes of the present. From those early days when Mellitus, our intrepid missionary, first planted the seeds of Christianity, to the reforming zeal of John Colet and the intellectual wrestling of John Donne, St. Paul's has always been a place where faith and reason have gone hand in hand, and it's a funny thing, isn't it, how a simple wooden structure built by those early Christians could evolve into the architectural marvel we see today. Old St. Paul's may be long gone, consumed by the Great Fire of 1666, but from those ashes rose Wren's masterpiece, a symbol of London's resilience and its enduring spirit. And as we stand here today, gazing up at that magnificent dome, it's hard not to feel a sense of awe, a connection to those who came before us, who worshipped and worked and dreamed within these walls. St. Paul's isn't just a building, it's a living, breathing testament to the power of faith, the enduring spirit of humanity, and the enduring allure of a good story well told. So next time you're in London, take a stroll up Ludgate Hill, step inside those hallowed halls, and take a moment to soak it all in. You never know what whispers of the past you might hear echoing through the ages. Join me in part 2 of this video. Please like and subscribe.